Going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. House Energy, Utilities, and Telecommunications Committee. We're here today for two bills we're going to look at. We've only got the room for 1 hour, so we're going to have to move along. And first on the, let's see, which one do you have?
This is Senator Huffstetler's bill,
Oh,
Senate
okay.
Bill 355.
Okay, so you're going to present the bill?
Yes.
Okay, Representative Welch, if you will present Senate Bill 355.
Thank you, sir. I'm grateful to Senator Huffstetler for allowing me to help sponsor this in the House. This is a very straightforward, good governance bill. As you may recall, I think back in 2010 or 2009, the General Assembly granted the QUIP program, which is a pre-financing of Plant Vogtle for nuclear power plants that allow for pre-financing. In doing that, when the General Assembly passed that legislation, there was not a limitation on the number of plants that this could apply to. So the bill before you would set a limitation that the QUIP program or the pre-financing program would only apply to Plant Vogtles 3 and 4. And so you'll see at line 14, it adds the language to the existing statute prior to January 1st, 2018. That's the new language. And so a utility can recover from its customers, so the law would then read, notwithstanding any provisions to the contrary, a utility shall recover from its customers, as provided in the subsection, the cost of financing associated with the construction of a nuclear generating plant which has been certified by the Commission prior to January 1, 2018. And in discussing this with Georgia Power, is my understanding there is no contracts pending to build any new nuclear power facilities within the state. And thus, adding this language would then require Georgia Power or any other power company to come back to the General Assembly to seek permission to utilize this provision again. So it is effectively a sunset, if you will, on the use of this financing method, and I would hope it would get your favorable consideration. Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to take questions on this, and then as I spoke to the chairman just briefly before, I'm supposed to be presenting a bill over at Tim Barr's committee as well, so I need to leave for that.
Representative Welch, I don't see any questions. You did a good job.
And I think Senator Huffstetler is here as well.
Okay, I want to recognize Senator Huffstetler, Chairman of the Senate Finance Committee. We're honored to have you here. Did you want to say anything?
I don't have to. I think he covered it.
Okay. Well, we're not going to vote on it today, but I appreciate the interest. None? That. Thank you for the presentation, and we'll move on to the next bill. Thank you.
He heard you, Mr. Chairman. You only had an hour. So.
Okay, good. All right, next bill to be considered is Senate Bill 426. Is that right? 426. I see Senator Gooch over here. Senator Gooch, are you going to present the bill?
I will try.
Okay.
How you doing today?
I'm doing well. Senator Gooch, do you have a title over in the Senate? You're not a chairman, I don't think. What are you? You're something.
I'm the majority whip.
Okay.
They call him.
I don't know what I'll be pushed back to next.
Okay. We're glad to have you here today.
Mr. Plumpkin County.
If
How's
you
everybody
would,
doing? I'm gonna give you a little picture to pass around while I'm talking, but it's a beautiful photo of our state capitol on a sunny day. I think it was taken this morning, actually. But I want you to take a look at the light poles and some of the attachments that are on it, because that's what we're going to be talking about today. 426 is a bill that many of you have heard about, worked on, probably had emails already, some for, some against, and that's why we call it the legislative process. Try to perfect our bills and to move them forward. But you've also been involved with the debate for the last 2 years. Chairman Parsons and I have spent a lot of time together on this topic about internet and broadband and connectivity. And there's a lot of talk about what's the next the new technology that's coming. Well, this is it. It's called small cell technology, or 5G. Most of us carry cell phones in our pockets or on our persons, and you have tablets and notebooks and all kinds of wireless devices, and that's being fed through cell towers for the most part today. Those cell towers are spread out all across our landscape. Most of them are on big towers that reach 200 feet in the air and higher. They have blinking lights on them. So that technology is changing and evolving into this new technology that you see in this picture. If you look on top of that light pole, you'll see a small device on top of that pole where the traffic light and the street light is. That is what is now being used to transmit that new signal, and especially in a more city type setting. And we're going to talk a little bit about that too, but these are new poles and new antennas that are being deployed across our country. The speeds of 5G versus 4G is about 10-fold. So if you think about how fast 4G service works, imagine the new service being 10 times that speed, and that's what we're talking about in terms of speed and connectivity. So that's going to be exciting for us. There are several provisions in the bill, and I hope that some of the internet providers and the cell phone companies in the room will come up and talk about the details and the technicalities of it, because they're much more versed at this than I am. But the issue I think that you're going to hear the most controversy over today, and that is terms like local control and locating new poles in the right-of-ways. Let me just give you all a little background on what we do today. Cities and counties and state right-of-ways are used for infrastructure. They're also used for walkways and obviously for travel lanes for our vehicles and buses, and fixed rail for mass transit and so forth and so on. But infrastructure like water and sewer, gas, electric, cable, all of those things are appropriate to have in the right-of-ways. And this is, in my opinion, just as important infrastructure as water and sewer. If you look at it from the point of view of economic development projects in our state, it's probably the biggest issue facing our communities today, especially rural areas. People that come and say, I want to move my company to your location, one of the first questions they ask, other than workforce and healthcare, they want to know, what kind of internet service do you have in your community? So this is very important. So I submit to you that I believe that city and county public right-of-ways and state right-of-ways are to be used for infrastructure, regardless of whether they're privately owned or public entities, such as cities and counties. So I think this is an appropriate use of our right-of-way. There are provisions in this bill that allows companies, providers to locate these antennas on existing poles, and if that's not allowed, then they would be allowed to put new poles in, but under certain conditions of local control. For example, historic districts are protected in this bill. You will hear from some people that will say, well, this could hurt my historic downtown. Well, I live in downtown Dahlonega. That's pretty historic. We still have the second, actually it's the oldest courthouse in the state today in the middle of town. It's a very historic town. Savannah's a very historic city. And so we don't want to destroy those historic areas. So this bill has provisions in there for historic districts. Anywhere there is a requirement for underground utilities for all utility providers, this bill would adhere to that as well. It does allow for co-locations on existing poles. So if a company comes in and wants to put one of these antennas on an existing pole, then the city or county shall allow them to do that. If there's room on that pole for another antenna, they will be required to co-locate on that antenna and that pole as well. So I think those are good things that are in the bill. Fees are another controversial issue. We have different cities and counties around the state that are charging as low as $200 per antenna attachment up to $16,000 per pole and attachment. And I can tell you that that is outrageously high, and it should not be allowed. If we're going to encourage deployment of new technologies and infrastructure investment by the private sector, then we have to be reasonable and require our local and state governments to try to streamline the permitting process, but also make it affordable. Cover cost, whatever that cost is, in the permitting requirements, but I don't think $16,000 is covering costs. I think it's much more than that. So we have examples of cities in this vicinity that charge as high as $16,212 for the installation of a new metal pole in the public right-of-way. And the city would not have to incur any cost of that installation. That would be totally borne by the provider of that service. So those are some of the hot topics of the bill. I can walk through the entire bill with you, or we can stop at this point and take questions and ask some of the folks in the room to come up and talk as well.
Yeah, I think you can, if you want to, some of the people from industry can address further parts of the bill.
Be great.
I don't see any questions, Senator Gooch. Appreciate the work you put into this. If you can stick around for a while after.
I'll be
you
happy
might
to.
want to. Might need to call you back up.
I'd love to be able to ask questions or comment to some of the
Okay.
things that may be talked about
Okay.
in the conversation, if you allow that.
All right, I don't know about time, but if possible, we'll do
Okay.
that. Thank you. All right, we have a number of people signed up, a pretty good number of people sign up, and the time is limited, as I said before. What I'm going to ask anybody that comes up and speaks on this bill, I want you to speak to the bill, not philosophy about anything. Speak to this bill, and if you would speak to specific parts of the bill, and if you have any, if you have any problems with the bill on the opposition side, if there are any, I don't know if anybody here opposes or not, but if you have any problems with it, if you will address the specific part of the bill that you have a problem with and what you would suggest be done there. But I do ask you to be brief because there are a good number of people who signed up, and to provide us, the committee members, with the information that we need related to the bill, related to this Senate bill, what it does, and be specific to specific parts of the bill. And with that, the first on here is Kevin, is that right? Kevin Curtin with AT&T.
It's okay with you. I just brought my colleague to do it two at once to save time. If that works.
Yeah, that's fine. But I do want everybody to be aware that we do have a limited amount of time, and your testimony needs to be limited. I haven't done the math here, but it needs to be at least under about 3 minutes.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Cliff Barnett, who sits beside me, is our RAN director, our head of our wireless network here in Georgia and does South Carolina as well. And I'd like to turn it over to him for his expert testimony in this area.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, representatives, thanks for the opportunity to talk to you today. I want to start by giving you a statistic that sort of shows where we are as far as the wireless industry. Since January of 2007, the amount of data usage and volume of data that's going through our network has increased 250,000%. It's 25 million times. We're going to see the same type of growth happening in the future with 5G. Right. We know how to address this capacity, and the new solutions now require small cells. When we deliver capacity on a tower, it's really a bit inefficient. We may have a hotspot or two, a park or something like that. A macro cell will cover an entire area, so you're taking some of that capacity that's not in that park and you're using it there. A small cell allows us to deliver that capacity there. And as Senator Gooch pointed out, it's also the delivery mechanism for 5G. Unfortunately, right now, the environment in Georgia really isn't conducive to small cells. I can give you an instance that hits directly home for me. I had a 250 small cell plan, a node plan, for the state of Georgia last year, and I was able to build one. So I have a de facto 250-year plan now. Not really gonna quite hack that, right? So the other thing that happens is any of that investment that was earmarked for the state of Georgia is now fleeing to the states that allow a more conducive environment for this, right? So, I've lost that investment money last year. The Senate bill before you is gonna provide a consistent environment for us to do this, right? Small cells, again, right now enhance the network capacity, but they're also, again, as I stated, the delivery mechanism for 5G. Another thing of note in the Senate bill is that it covers air gig. AirGig is a new technology that we're trialing right now. And what it is essentially broadband over the power line infrastructure. And that's really going to help rural Georgia. One of the problems, right, with delivering really high-speed broadband in rural Georgia has been the capital investment. This uses existing power lines and all, so that's contained in this bill as well. So that's going to facilitate broadband spreading all over the state. Senator Gooch did a great job talking about one of the things in 5G, which is the download speeds, but you know, how fast they are. Another really important note in 5G and the 5G standards, and this has to do with the Internet of Things, is that we're required to support 2.5 million devices per square mile, right? So that's not 2.5 million phones. You're not going to get that many people stacked up in a square mile, right? But this is all sorts of Internet of Things. So this is smart cities, this type of a device. You cannot do that off of a tower. Again, right? You need to concentrate that capacity and all. So there's really no way to deliver that type of capacity and that type of support from a tower type of environment, right? We need to have small cells. So, you know, the investment's going to help not only, you know, the big urban centers like Atlanta, but we've done an Accenture study and we're looking at a potentially a $30 million investment in Rome, $13 million in Dublin, and $162 million in Augusta. So that's what this type of, you know, economic, it'll bring that type of economic benefit to the state of Georgia. So again, you know, we're in this tower type of environment. We need to really transition. That's what our laws and ordinances are set up right now. We really need to pivot that to support the small cell technology, and the Senate Bill 426 will help us do that.
Thank you. I don't see any questions. Thank you very
All
much.
right.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Of the 249 that did not,
Yes, sir.
where were they across the state?
They're predominantly in Atlanta right now, although we're looking at, that's where we start with most technology. For instance, 4G technology started in Atlanta in 2011, and then we finished out building the entire state in 5 years in 2016. So they're predominantly where the high capacity need is right now. But I've got more in the plan, I just need the ability to do them.
And if I'm, okay. Sorry, I was going to just answer the rest of his question. Where did the capital go? The capital went to states that had laws like this in place, quite frankly, so we could put it to use. So he lost his budget to North Carolina, Florida, and other states.
Yeah, it went south for the winter.
Any questions?
Yeah, I pardon the voice. I'm gonna try to talk slow and actually concentrate on making noise. I appreciate the presentation. I don't disagree on the 250,000%, you know, all of that stuff. And I would like, I think we're gonna have a hearing on the bill today. I would like to have your expertise. If you're the guy that's deploying this, I have some logistical questions about the bill. I don't doubt we need it. I don't doubt there are cities that are giving you problems and counties that are giving you problems. I happen to represent one that wants to welcome you with open arms, but has some concerns about the commas and periods in here, which makes a difference to me. You know, so Kevin, I'll yield to you about which of you that is. But as we move that forward, I'm a believer, but I also believe, you know, in our cities, and I want to find a match, and I'm convinced that we can do that. So,
Absolutely.
you know, anybody else, I'm happy to hear the story about that we need it. But from my standpoint, I believe. I just want to figure out how I balance the two so that the people that live there can enjoy it as well.
Yes,
Thanks.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The two quick questions. The one is what's the range of these cell towers? And the second one is given if you get the cell towers, what would your commitment be to the surface wave technology? Would that be decreased at any time?
The small cells have a radius of approximately 500 feet or so. That's what that is. And again, that's going to be a targeted, capacity type of selection. But I'm not quite sure. Didn't quite understand your second question. I'm sorry.
The commitment to the surface wave technology. Is this going to affect the commitment?
Oh, I see. Project AirGig. Yes, I think Kevin. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that changed between last year and this year in this bill was the inclusion of AirGig. And what happened over the summer and over the fall was that we entered into the one and only trial we have in the United States on AirGig with Georgia Power. And we have that up and running right now. It started in December. We cover air gig antennas in this bill now as well, in addition to traditional small cells. So we want to be the first state in the country ready to deploy air gig if it's to be commercialized. And this bill would allow us to do that very quickly and in a streamlined fashion. And right now, we're the only state that I know of that has air gig antennas covered in their bill.
Say this, if you have more than one question, we need to ask one question and maybe we can circle back for a second one or a third, but we need to go ahead. We do still have a lot of people want to come up and speak, so, but that's not directed to you, Representative, directed to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Kevin, it looks like this bill, Senate Bill 426, has either improved or changed significantly over the last few days. But my concern is I still see, starting on line 376, my concern is around fees, because it just says reasonable costs. And then the senator, even in his presentation, said anything between $200 to $16,000. And so I know all cities are not created equal. All cities are not created equal. When you look at the 538 cities or counties, 159 of them. So if you could just help me along, what is reasonable, or should we change the word reasonable to market, so that way one city is not charging more than others? Because when you start to look at a project, depending on the scope and scale, it's going to really come down to costs, right? It's not going to be benefits, such as telemed or helping our law enforcement or first responders. It's going to come down to if a city wants to do this or not, depending on the cost. And so I'm struggling that this bill still has reasonable costs, and nobody has sufficiently answered that question to me.
Sure, I'll take my best attempt at that. I think if you continue on in that section, we get more specific. If you turn it over to the top of page 12, we talk specifically about the actual, this is about submission of an application and what the costs are.
Right.
The way the bill is structured, originally the bill was structured for $100 per small cell for the first 5, and then $50 per small cell and anything over 5. That was the original bill.
Right.
The bill has changed.
Right.
Now the bill allows for $200 per for each of the first 5, and $100 each additional small cell applied for, if that application is for city-owned infrastructure that is not part of a power company. So if I am trying to put on a light post or a traffic signal, we doubled the fees in the bill to allow them to do things like structural integrity, things like that would need to be done. That wouldn't need to be done in the case of a power company, because power company would have to have a pole attachment agreement with us, and all those sort of things would be worked out in the pole attachment agreement. So they would do those in advance of us putting in a permit. So the fees, the application fees, have doubled in the bill from introduction, and now they're very specific.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no more questions. Thank you for your presentation. Next on the list is Bob Davis from Verizon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, everybody. I was asked to actually walk through the bill as quickly as possible. So if I may, I'll just walk through the specific sections, and if folks have questions, they can. So quickly, major sections of the bill. C1 is just the definitions, including a small wireless facility and the notion of co-location. Section C2, overall, really what it does, it provides wireless providers access to the right-of-way under a streamlined process. Today, under state law, wireless providers do not have access to the right-of-way in Georgia, so this provision gives us that right. Also under C2, we have to comply with reasonable undergrounding requirements. We have to repair any damage that's caused in the right-of-way. We have to remove any abandoned facilities that are abandoned after 12 months within a 90-day period. We have to relocate like other utilities in the right-of-way based on DOT road projects. We have to comply with reasonable requirements for historic districts under state and federal law. And finally, it provides a $20 annual fee for actually access to the right-of-way. So that portion of our small cell that encroaches in the right-of-way, the fee is $20. Section C3 is really the heart of the bill. That's the streamlined process. I'll try not to repeat some of the stuff Kevin said. What we were able to negotiate over the last couple of weeks is what I would term a preference for co-location. So before there's a concern about new poles, as we've heard before. Before a carrier can put up a new pole, they have to provide documentation that they, within that search area around where they want to place a pole, they look for opportunities to co-locate. So that's something we have to provide. The application process is simply this. Within 30 days of an application, the city or county has to deem the application incomplete or complete. Within 75 days, they have to make a determination of whether to deny or accept an application. Some of the things that they can deny an application for include noncompliance with state code, including electrical and building code, public safety concerns, so the traditional police powers that a city or county has, failure to comply with specific height limitations noted in the bill, failure to comply with undergrounding rules, as I just mentioned, interference with traffic control equipment or sight lines, various spacing requirements that a city or county may have about pole spacing, historic district requirements. Additionally, things like stealth and concealment and objective design requirements for new poles or co-location. As Kevin mentioned, the application fees are $200 for each 5 of small cells in an application. So that'd be $1,000 for 5 small cells, and then $100 for each after that. That's for the cities and counties. One other thing that we require to do is that within 9 months after the permit is issued, we have to have the small cell working. So we can't just sit there and tie up real estate and not put these things to use. Section C4. Section C4 is really a review application of anything that doesn't qualify under the streamlined process. So if we want to put up a taller structure, C4 covers how we go through that process. There's really no real restrictions on cities and counties and what they can require in that, other than there's a shot clock that mirrors the federal shot clock for macro towers. So there's a 90-day shot clock for substantial modifications and a 150-day shot clock for new structures that are put up. C5, question? I'm sorry, it's the section numbers of the bill. It's,
If you have the page number of the bill, but if you can give the,
yeah. So right now I was actually talking about C4, which is on. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not citing the full statutory section. I mean 36-66C hyphen is the actual section number. I apologize. That's right. So I just covered C4. So C5, it starts on line 486. And this deals with the actual co-location of our facilities on city and county infrastructure. The attachment rate per year is $40 annually. And it allows specifically for negotiations with the electricities to come up with an agreement to attach to their poles up until May 31st, 2019. After that time, there becomes a default rate for $40 for attachment rates. A couple more sections quickly. C9, this is another preference for co-location section. Basically, it says that to the extent that a carrier like Verizon Wireless puts up a pole, we shall allow other carriers to co-locate on these poles that we put up to the extent technically feasible. And that's really a summary of the bill, sir.
that was a good presentation section. Appreciate that. We do have, I'll tell you what, I'm going to take a question from Representative Martin. Is that you? Yes, sir. But we're going to have to move on. Maybe somebody else will have an answer that still comes up to speak, but go right ahead.
You mentioned you can charge co-location. Co-location. You need to allow it if it's available. How much would you charge for that? Is that in the bill?
Oh, no, it's not, sir. So it'd be kind of a reasonable terms and conditions between the carriers. But
This is going to be my trick question.
Sure, I know.
We talked about
Yes, we
yesterday.
did.
We're setting a rate everybody else can
Right.
charge, but you can charge whatever you want. I'm going
Well,
to need to get my hands around that.
that's right. Well, just one comment about that, though. It's a two-way street. If Verizon puts up a pole and we're going to charge an unreasonable rate to AT&T, guess what they're going to do to us in return? So
But, and I'll, Chairman's ready to move, so I will. But what happens if y'all start charging each other unreasonable rates? They come and put more poles in, and the city's less happy than they are today. So I want everybody to get along. I want this to work. I just think.
And by the way, that's a point of discussion we're having with the cities and counties.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Mr. Davis. Appreciate it. Let's see, Catherine Fleming is signed up to speak. If you would tell us your name and who you represent.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Catherine Fleming, and I'm the Senior Manager of State Government Affairs for Charter Communications. Today I want to speak with y'all about the ways Senate Bill 426 in its current form could damage the competitive landscape for video services companies here in Georgia, like Charter Communications. Charter Communications is America's fastest growing TV, internet, and voice company. We're at the intersection of technology and entertainment, and we facilitate essential communications that connect more than 26 million residential and business customers in 41 states. In Georgia, we employ 800 people and provide cable and internet service to over 350,000 customers. Cable companies, including Charter, built the infrastructure, and we risked the original capital to bring high-speed internet to rural Georgia. We asked for no special treatment and received no government subsidies to do so. Today, Charter delivers a minimum of 100 megabits of internet service, and we're planning on rolling out 1 gigabit service this year to customers in rural areas and small cities like Noonan, Sandersville, Luthersville, Tryon, Hamilton, Cedartown, Milledgeville, Ringgold, and Dublin, to name a few. Technology advances are inevitable and good, and we believe that the legislature should promote a level playing field that supports multiple video technology platforms and encourages private industry investment and fair competition. Unfortunately, in its current form, Senate Bill 426 tilts the scale in favor of one technology over another. As proposed, this bill picks winners and losers amongst various video technology providers by creating a new system of lower fees for a specific video technology to use the public right-of-way. Senate Bill 426 creates unintended consequences. Customers of cable companies currently pay a 5% franchise fee on their video services. And I don't think this legislature intended for two families living next door to each other watching the same movie to pay different regulatory fees based on the delivery platform. Small cell technology, like the networks described in this bill, will be used to deploy a video product using the public right-of-way that will compete directly with cable video services offered by companies like Charter. However, cable video delivered services will be subject to a 5% franchise fee, while small cell delivered video services will be subject to 0 franchise fees. In order to better level the playing field, Charter would recommend that we lower the video franchise fee to a maximum of 3%. This reduction would save Georgians money, and true competition will result in better services and more competitive prices. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with y'all today, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Fleming. Appreciate it. We do have I think there's a question, but I'm going to ask the member to hold off. I know we have at least one more person from the cable industry to speak, and maybe your question will be answered. I don't know, but thank you very much.
Okay.
Appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
And the next person, I believe, is from the cable industry. Pretty sure, Stephen Lofton.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Employed by the cable industry for at least the next hour. Appreciate that. Correct. I represent the Georgia Cable Association, which is 5 companies that employ over 12,500 Georgians all across the state, annual payroll of over $725 million. Our companies also pay over $70 million to local governments and franchise fees. Ostensibly, this is for use of the right-of-way. It's equal to about 5% of our gross revenues in video. Actually, it's equal to 5.025% of our gross revenues because we pay a franchise fee on the franchise fee that is collected by the local governments. It's an interesting proposition, but that's where we are. Senate Bill 426 gives wireless technologies new access to the right-of-way and at a much cheaper rate, $20 per attachment, as Mr. Davis mentioned earlier. We just feel like it's not fair to allow one technology into the right-of-way at a lower rate than another. And I want to make very clear, I'm not arguing for their fees to increase. Their rate may be the actual cost of maintaining the right-of-way, and that should be appropriate. So I want to be very clear about that. What we are sure of is that 5% that we pay far exceeds whatever the cost of maintaining that right-of-way is. So we need parity in the marketplace. We can't have one technology that doesn't pay right-of-way franchise fees and another does. We can have one technology that doesn't pay into the UAF and another one that does. Other telephone fees like that. So lowering the video franchise fee to 3% would begin to level the playing field. And the time to do it is now, because the local governments are going to be collecting new revenue from these small cell devices. This is, again, a new entrant to the right-of-way. There will be new permit fees that they'll be collecting. So as those fees go up, we feel like it's appropriate for our fees to come down. Mr. Chairman, thank you for the time and for considering our request.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lofton. You do have a question.
Yes, sir.
I want to make sure the committee knows that we have to end here at 2:30, not because I just want it to be an hour meeting, but there's another committee coming in here. We've got to leave at 2:30 because there's another one coming in. So, but Representative Belton, you had a question. You passed? Thank you.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Mr.
it.
Chairman.
Kimberly Adams.
Chairman, in the essence of time, I'll defer I am supportive of it, but my colleagues did such an amazing job covering it. I'll defer my time.
Okay, you might want to tell us who you're with.
Kimberly Adams with Crown Castle.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Kellen
Yep, Helen
Carr?
Carr.
Yeah.
And I'm representing the wireless.
Come to the
infrastructure-
microphone. It's on. These are being
And-
video cast, I guess they call it.
Similar to Kimberly, I'll keep this very brief, but I'm Kellen Carr representing the Wireless Infrastructure Association, and WIA represents the companies that make up the wireless infrastructure ecosystem. And since many of our members, the wireless carriers, have already spoken on the bill, we would just like to express our public support for 426. From the association's perspective, we feel like this bill is very narrowly scoped and a good way to deploy wireless technologies just within the public right-of-way. So thank you, Chairman, for your time, and we would just like to ask for favorable consideration of the bill.
Thank you for coming. Cosby Johnson.
Good afternoon, Chairman and committee members. Thank you all for your time. The expansion of broadband technology is a critical component to economic development, healthcare, education, and public safety. As the quality of life and business climate are directly impacted by broadband connectivity, the Georgia Chamber supports Senate Bill 426 and is dedicated to continue to work with members of this committee to create a uniform permitting process for expanding broadband deployment to those in rural areas who need it most. We commend Senator Gooch as well as this committee's hard work and you all's continued hard work on this issue of statewide importance.
Johnson, appreciate you coming today. Todd Edwards. You would tell us your name and who you represent.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I'm Todd Edwards. I'm with the Association of County Commissioners of Georgia and ACCG. I think it's safe to say that we have concerns with the bill. Brief background regarding the bill specifically. We have been at the table since the hearings over the summer. I know this language has been found in House Bill 533. A couple of other bills. We've submitted numerous comments. To the industry's credit, some concessions have been made. I don't think we're quite on the same page yet on being in agreement with the concessions and actually meaning what has been reported. Counties realize the importance of 5G. Our commissioners get requests from the constituents just like you do. We also understand the critical need to work with the industry to deploy this equipment in local government or the public right-of-way. We also have to balance this need, this desire, with proper management of said right-of-way. I mentioned earlier, I think by Representative Chuck Martin, our concerns mainly exist with logistics, commas, and periods, and some of the loopholes in the bill. with that, I want y'all to understand, y'all saw a picture earlier, and those were pretty snazzy little boxes outside the Capitol. I pass them every day on my way in here. This bill does not only pertain to those boxes and the antennas on top, but also 28 cubic foot equipment boxes adjacent to said co-locations on existing poles, an additional 4 cabinets of undefined size, and again, that's adjacent, that's not to the pole. When you get to that much equipment on a right-of-way, I think the concerns we have are legitimate, and I'll briefly go through them, and I will list the line number specifically. I could go on longer, but in the interest of time, I'll be as abbreviated as possible. There's been a lot of discussion on fees. We've never asked. We don't own poles primarily as counties, so we're not asking for yearly fees, but we do, and have many discussions, ask that fees actually cover the permitting the cost of the permitting process, so they're not subsidized by taxpayers. There's co-location language in there. We said that they're forced to look at co-location prior to building a new pole, and at the end of the day, we want co-location. I want to stress that. It's in our best interest and everyone's best interest, I believe, even the industry, is to co-locate rather than have new poles in the right-of-way. But on looking at some of the language in there, they say they're forced to co-locate first, but then there's words such as unless it cannot meet its service objectives, and this is going to be on lines 275, and thanks for reminding me, through 286, unless there's a substitute in front of you, and I'm not sure. May I ask of that of the committee? Are you looking at a substitute, or? Yes, sir. Thank you very much. And then near the end of that language, then it says that such location would not impose unreasonable technical limitations or additional cost. It could be argued that any such co-location could do either of those. Again, looking at the technicalities, and that's what we're trying to work with the industry on now. Mutual co-location requirement was mentioned earlier. We would agree that reciprocal, they're mentioned in there on reciprocal rates. Whatever rates are charged of local governments, we would ask that the industry charge in and among themselves in that regard. And again, we've had these discussions with the industries, and there are no surprises in what I'm telling you today. With regard to risk issues, I don't think we've come to see eye and eye on the liability or the indemnification of those responsible or who is responsible should accidents occur in the right-of-way. Should there be bonding? Should there be insurance? We have not come to agreement on that language. On undergrounding requirements, yes, they've made a concession that say they've addressed it, but there's also a provision in there so they'll do it so long as it does not prohibit service. Again, if you get a couple of good lawyers in the room, anything could be argued prohibits service. There goes your undergrounding requirement. Historic preservation, same. You're going to see these terms pop up again and again. Line number 251, thank you, sir. Undergrounding was line 195 and 96. I'm now on line 251 or thereabouts. They're following historic preservation. They'll do it so long as the words are reasonable, technologically feasible, non-discriminatory, and technologically neutral.
Mr. Edwards.
Yes, sir.
You're not doing what I asked.
What did you ask, sir?
I asked that you speak specifically to the bill, to a section, to language, and tell us what you would like to have it changed to.
Remove these words.
Historic districts doesn't really give us the kind of information we need as we move forward.
On historic districts, I would remove the words that does not prohibit service. Go into the historic preservation, or on lines 251, remove the words reasonable and technologically feasible. I believe the words non-discriminatory and technologically neutral could stay in there. Moving to lines 310 and 314, and I'd be happy to submit these recommendations to any members of the committee. I've already submitted them to the industry and will do so, Mr. Chairman. Lines 310 through 314, we asked for limitations to be put on applications submitted simultaneously so that local government permitting offices are not inundated at once and shutting them down. The current language provides up to 10 applications with 25 co-locations on each applications, 250 applications by, say there's 4 providers, up to 1,000. I think that might be a problem. I would greatly reduce that number of applications which could be submitted simultaneously.
Would be a good number then.
Oh, say 10 per provider then, and each one counting as a single application process at once. Lines 346 through 355 also pertains to that. I'd also call into mind, and I don't have the language or the line for this, there is a prohibition on moratoriums in this on receiving permits and acting on them. There's reasons that counties and cities enact moratoriums if they're either inundated or, say, a court throws out their permitting process. I think we need to either greatly reduce the applications, extend the time clock, or remove, specific recommendation, remove the prohibition on moratoriums. Lines 321 and 322, should we not meet these shot clocks, an application should be deemed approved. I'd respectfully request that the words deemed approved be removed and instead add some sort of penalty for those not able to meet the shot clock. Presumed reasonable, line 462 through 465. A provider's decision to place anything there is presumed reasonable.
Mr. Edwards.
I'm going as fast as I
know,
can,
but
Mr.
I think
Chairman.
I'm going to have to call your time. And if you would, I would have to note that you have not brought anything to this. You're presenting here, and we appreciate you coming. But you had not presented any of this to at least to the chair before this meeting. You haven't talked to me and presented any of these recommendations to the committee before today. So if you will do that, if you will present them like you'd said in writing to the committee, and we're not going to take a vote today.
May I have just a few closing comments then, Mr.
You can have 45 seconds.
I appreciate that. I have submitted this to the industry as asked to do. I know that Cobb County specifically has spoken to you with, regarding some of their concerns. The reason I request that these improvements made in the bill, at the end of the day, should the bill pass in its current form, you've all but taken away local authority over the permitting process. It will fall on the state and whatever's in the law. And if any changes to be made, I think the public will be coming to you, not county commissioners, because it will be out of their control. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. We appreciate you being here today. From my county, Cobb County, Jackie McMorris.
Good afternoon, Chairman. I'm Dr. Jackie McMorris, Deputy County Manager for Cobb County. Cobb is well represented here on the committee, and I thank you for the work that you all have done on this bill. Certainly, the concessions have helped a lot, but on behalf of Cobb County residents and the Board of Commissioners of Cobb County, there are still concerns that we have. Todd Edwards has done an awesome job of capturing a lot of those, as have our county attorney and associate attorneys. All we ask is that you would consider those concessions, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you. That was a great presentation. Cobb County right there. Nathan Humphrey from the, well, I'll let you introduce yourself. Nathan Humphrey, are you here? Well, then that's one down. Travis, are you here, Travis Bussey?
I'm Travis Bussey with Sprint. Let's echo what AT&T and Verizon said. We're supportive of this bill. We need this statewide framework as we're trying to make this huge investment in the state of Georgia. I cover 14 states for Sprint, and I was actually in Tennessee yesterday for the bill, and it passed out there unanimously. The counties and cities are neutral, and we hope to get that way here in Georgia too. We'd hate to have our neighbors to the north pass this bill and our investments go in there and out of the state of Georgia.
Charlotte Davis, Ms. Davis.
Good afternoon, Chairman Parsons, members of the committee. I'm Charlotte Davis with the Georgia Municipal Association. Appreciate the opportunity to comment on Senate Bill 426 today. As we've heard, this small cell language has been through many revisions. Concessions have been made. We've worked with Senator Gooch and the industry, and Todd echoed a lot of the local government concerns that we have. We're working through. I think we'll have language here pretty soon to address some of those, but for the purposes of today, and I understand you want it to be brief, Chairman Parsons, but I do want to point out really two large remaining concerns that GMA still has with the bill that's in front of you, and because of those concerns haven't been addressed yet, we are opposed to the current form of the bill in front of you today. The 2 points that I want to make. Of course, co-location, as we've heard, that's the part we agree on. That's the part that the industry says is their preference, and that's certainly the local government preference as well. If there are already existing structures and poles in the rights-of-way, we'd prefer that the first option is, of course, to go on those existing structures, but the bill still does allow for new poles to be installed in the rights-of-way. And currently, cities, the way it works, are permitting and siting and being able to negotiate with the companies on where those new poles go. And we believe that a lot of our local control over that is removed under Senate Bill 426 as it is. Of course, the new poles are our largest concern related to aesthetics, to public safety. what the types of new poles, if it's a breakaway structure or a steel pole, it's stuff that local officials have to take in mind, and especially if local control is removed, it becomes a larger liability for the city governments. Of course, if this bill were only tailored to co-location, it doesn't mean that new poles would not be allowed. It just wouldn't be addressed in a state law, but they would still be allowed to be cited and permitted as they are in current times. To the pretty picture of the small cell, I do agree that is pretty. We walk past it every day. It's also in the city of Atlanta, and so I assume that they received a permit and were able to go on that pole. I think the city of Atlanta is here today and can talk a little bit more about their permits, what they've received and what they've granted. But one thing that you don't see in the picture of the small cell is small cells on the state capitol, because state property is exempt from the Senate Bill 426. And line 101, I believe, is in your copy of the bill, where shall only apply to property of an interest under the control of an authority. And flipping back to the definition of authority on line 42, it's limited to any local governing authority. So I think that's something to take in consideration. Of course, we want a statewide approach to broadband deployment and small cells, but state rights-of-way seem to be exempted along with state property. So that pushes infrastructure back onto our municipal infrastructure and our county infrastructure. So that's certainly a concern for us. And then the second issue I want to address, of course, are the fees. Not the permitting fees, but actually the rates of co-locating, of attaching, and of putting up a new pole, the rental rates. We've heard $20 as an annual rental fee. Maybe in some smaller communities that is an adequate figure, but I would say that sitting in Atlanta or in a metro area, the value is certainly a lot higher to our wireless providers, and I think it becomes discriminatory when we're carving out wireless providers to be able to get into the right-of-way at a lower fee than some of the company, or lower rate than some of the companies that are doing business in our rights-of-way today. And then the third thing I want to quickly address, if I may, is the issue of the franchise fees that have been alluded to. Of course, without proper vetting of that and without a fiscal note in front of us today, we would be very cautious and opposed to any discussions around eliminating those. So, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my comments. I'll be happy to take any questions if there are. I appreciate your consideration and allowing me to comment on our small cell bill.
I don't see any questions. Thank you for coming today. If you would, as far as some of your arguments, if you would like to present that to the committee in writing, anything would support why you think that the rate should be higher, some kind of supporting evidence to us, that would be good. Or any of the arguments that you want to present to us.
Thanks so much.
Thank you
Appreciate
very
your time.
much. Okay. Megan Middleton, City of Atlanta.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Megan Middleton. I'm the lobbyist for the City of Atlanta. I just wanted to quickly correct some of the numbers that I've been heard thrown about over the past few months. And then this is William Johnson, who is our Deputy COO and also our Department of Public Works Commissioner. So he deals with this and his staff on a day-to-day basis. Just wanted to say, I know sometimes the word Atlanta is thrown out there and it's more of a regional word, not specifically Atlanta. And since we're talking specifics, I needed to address some of the numbers that are out there. In 2017, the City of Atlanta received 279 permit applications. Throughout the year, at the end of 2017, we had approved 255 of those. That means there were only 24 out there. 18 of those are still in the process and may be approved could have been approved at the beginning of 2018, but these are 2017 numbers. Out of those 279 applications, we only had 6 that were denied where we couldn't come to some agreement with the provider. That doesn't mean that they won't come back with a new location and maybe already have. So that 6% is only just over 2% of the entire number of permits that applications that we receive. So we are working with the industry. We have not, as a number I heard before, denied over 200 permit applications. Like I said, that may just be a confusion with the Atlanta region, which we love our brother and sister counties and cities out there, but we're talking specifics here for Atlanta. So I just wanted to point that out, make sure we had those numbers straight, and then shoot it to William Johnson, who's got the specifics of the day-to-days.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for allowing us to speak here.
Yes, sir, and I appreciate you coming, but if you can make it really brief. We actually have people from the next committee starting to come in now. So
we'll make it brief.
Okay.
There were some pictures floating around. Well, I have some pictures of actual small cell antenna here in the Atlanta area that we actually had to have taken down because they were co-located. You can see the size of some of these things. They have substantial weight to them. So as we talk about cost and you start putting 2 and 3 antenna on a pole, that has to be engineered, it has to be reviewed, it has to be inspected for safety purposes. So when we start looking at this bill setting a rate, I think we should really, I would appreciate it if we could think about the actual cost. Numbers that have been thrown around about relative to Atlanta's actual costs are reflected in our ordinance. The ordinance reflects our actual costs where we have an extremely high cost for installing metal poles or any other type of pole. We've allowed the carriers to install their own pole at their own cost, so they're not forced to pay those rates. It's all about the actual cost for providing the service, providing the inspections that are necessary, the engineering that's necessary, and the renewal process for a lot of these permits that are out there, because they can't just be permitted and allowed to be out there forever. I just got back from Minnesota. I went up because Atlanta's going to be hosting the Super Bowl next year. I'm probably the most popular guy with the industry right now because everybody wants to put small cells here. I have pictures in my cell phone, I didn't print them out, of the small cell antenna that were installed for the Super Bowl, and they're every bit as big and bulky as the ones in the picture that I'm passing around. So they're talking about 600 to 700 of these in the Atlanta region just for the Super Bowl, in addition to some of the other deployments that they have, and this is just our concern. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would ask you this, if you can come back and tell us in writing, or maybe at the next meeting, how the Super Bowl would be successful without people using their data in their cell phones. Not now, but you just kind of left me with a question. It doesn't kind of ring true with me, but thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. We're all for it.
Okay. And we have Tony Tilley. Are you here?
Thank you,
Tell us who
Mr.
you're
Chairman.
with.
Thank you, committee. I'm Tony Tilley. I'm the chair of the CWA Georgia Political Council. I'm also a campaign lead for the Communication Workers of America District 3. We cover the 9-state Bell South region. This bill has been passed in North Carolina and Florida. We are supporting this bill in all of our states. Now, not only do we support it because of the good jobs that's going to come with this, but I'm the phone guy. This is why y'all see me like this. This is my uniform, okay? It says Rethink Possible. Understand, when I get out of my truck every day, there's nothing on that uniform that differentiates me as the wireline guy versus the wireless guy. My customers and the people in a lot of your districts that buy our services, they expect a seamless service. They don't care if they're at home. They don't care if they're at the Falcons game. They don't care if they're in their car. Well, I'm losing a lot of productive time because I'm having to sit around educating my customers instead of fixing their services on why our company can't afford to get this stuff to them. So we need to make sure that if we want these technologies out to our citizens and my customers to where I can have a little happier day on the job, that we get some help in this, because we have got to find ways to make this affordable. My customers, I have to educate them. We're a stockholder-owned company, that we have to make money, and I know they want the service, but we can't just go put stuff in if we're going to lose money on it. So we could use the help, and thank you very much for your
Thank
time.
you. Thank you for coming. We appreciate the Communication Workers of America and all the great people that they represent. Senator, would you like to say a few words to wrap up?
There has been a lot of discussion about this today, and some of the same conversations we had over the Senate. The bill passed with only 2 no votes. And I do want to continue to reach out to the local governments and try to come up with compromise in some of these areas and make this a statewide plan. Let me tell you one thing about the DOT and the state property exemption. The DOT has a book over 250 pages that addresses utilities in the right-of-way. So they don't have to be included in this bill because they already have their own rules that are statewide. And that's what we're trying to do with this bill, is make it a statewide plan and not have 500 different cities with different ordinances and 159 different counties with different ordinances. So we're trying to pretty much streamline the process like the DOT has already done. So I look forward to more discussion with you.
All right. Thank you, Senator. Appreciate it.
I would like to talk to the DOT and see what they do relative to what
Okay, it's almost, thank you, Reverend. It's almost exactly 2:30. If you have anything that you want to turn into us, submit in writing, turn it in to Blake here, Blake Doss. And with that, unless there's objection, the committee is adjourned.